Mark and Shauna, Level 5, Lesson 11.
In the past few levels, we've worked really hard on how to stretch, how to communicate stretch, lead stretch, follow stretch. We've discovered with a lot of our Lindy Hop dance moves that stretch is not always the answer. And in fact, a lot of moves, we don't want to lead the moves with any stretch. This is actually not an unfamiliar concept for a lot of the moves we've done so far. The easiest way for us to explain this, if we grab our own hands, we can just sort of let them lay loose like this. But the minute we start flexing our shoulders, all of a sudden we build up some stretch in our own hands against each other. So it's really hard for me if I want to flex those muscles to not create some sort of stretch in my hands. So this lesson, we're going to try to do some moves that don't require that stretch, where we don't need to flex those shoulders, and we'll also show you how much it matters when we do engage those muscles. If we were in closed position, Mark could just start walking. He's got like a little bit of a pulse, he's nice and loose, and the arms aren't doing much here, so he's definitely not leading any stretch. He's not engaging those shoulder muscles. So you'll notice as he's walking that I go the same way as Mark, where with a stretch, if we were in closed position and he wanted to stretch, if he engaged those muscles, I would end up going the opposite direction as him instead of walking with him or walking backwards with him, either way. So there's several moves that you've already learned and you probably use all the time in your dancing. And those moves don't require any stretch, and they have that same closed position walking. So the first one we're going to do is the Lindy Promenade. So in the Lindy Promenade, Mark comes in front, and he's able to just get me to walk with him nice and easy there. Rock step, and I just end up walking with him. So if we did that same move, the Lindy Promenade, but when we got to the walking section, instead of just walking, if Mark engaged those shoulders and wanted a stretch to happen, then when we got to here, I would actually step back from him or away from him as he went into that step. So we would be doing some different move here. So if we had a stretch, we could go into some kind of maybe aerial. Maybe he wanted to do a frog jump there or something else. So if we initiate that stretch, we end up going in opposition, where if he doesn't initiate that stretch, like in the promenade, we can just walk together. Here's another easy example of that closed position walking that doesn't need any stretch. If we do that he goes, she goes move from level 1, right here when Mark takes his rock step, because he's not leading any stretch, he's able to get me to go with him there. And then the same thing on this one, I go in front, but because he does not lead any stretch, we go the same direction in that part. The same concept for now is how we're applying the swing out counts 5 and 6. So if Mark comes in for our swing out, if he just goes straight backward into like a walk type of a move, then I end up going with him there on count 5 and then across. Where we could actually do that swing out, and if we got to count 5, if Mark initiated stretch, we could do a move that went into a rock step there instead of me going with him. Here's one more example of an old classic move. We can lead with a stretch or without a stretch, and it really changes the move. So this is called a grapevine. So if Mark crosses over, but he does not lead any sort of stretch, then as he crosses his foot over, I end up crossing behind, and we twist the same direction. So we can do this grapevine going with each other. So if we take this move, but this time Mark's going to lead it with stretch. So immediately, as he crosses back or behind with his leg, he's going to engage his shoulders. And anytime he's engaging his shoulders or asking for stretch, we're going to use that rule where we're matching the hands. So I have to keep the hands in the middle because we're doing a stretch or a compress. And so then we end up going in opposition of one another, where the other grapevine we went together. So we open together, and then as we come to the center, then we're going to cross over together, and we have some compression in this hand, and our shoulders are still engaged. And now stretching again and compressing again. So those were some examples in closed position of times where you're already leading or following moves without needing any stretch. Let's do some in open position. If we remember back all the way to level 1 when we started learning Charleston, we showed a Charleston Basic from open position. Now, you'll notice as we do this, Mark's going to step back with his left foot. And as he does that, he swings his arms just like he would on any sort of rock step. But the difference is he's not flexing those shoulder muscles. The arms are really loose, and that causes me to step forward with him. So as we go into this 20s Charleston or Charleston and open, as we go into that first step, I'm able to go the same direction as Mark, and you'll notice our arms are able to swing. They're both swinging freely. Where when Mark initiates a stretch or communicates a stretch to me, then we have that rule where the hands have to stay in the middle. So if he led that same move, a similar Charleston Basic, but this time as he did his arm swing, he also flexed his shoulders. I would go away from him, and we have to keep these hands in the middle now, so it becomes a very different move. Now the interesting thing on the social dance floor, a lot of times we'll see leaders try to go into this 20s Charleston or just some sort of Charleston Basic in open position. And even though Mark stays loose and doesn't flex his shoulder muscles, we see follows, so as he steps back with the left, we see follows go ahead and create some type of stretch or go into a round rock. And that's not quite correct. So follows, the trick for us is learning to feel whether he's staying loose and doing a solo movement and not stretching, or if he's engaging those shoulders and asking for stretch. And then leaders, you have to realize how important it is. The smallest amount of engaging in those shoulders, kind of like how we did with the hands here, that's going to communicate a lot to our follow. So here's our 20s Charleston. So we're going back with the left for Mark, and we're able to do this 20s Charleston. And as long as he's not leading any stretch, then we can keep doing this solo movement together, and the arms can swing freely, and we won't have the same rules that we have with stretch. So let's take the same move, but instead of doing our Charleston Basic in place, we're going to just turn this into walking. So Mark could step back with his left leg, and as long as he doesn't initiate stretch, he should just be able to walk backwards and swing those arms. So we're walking along backwards, and then he could also turn this into a walk forward. Now, leaders, as you're practicing this one and you want to get her to change directions, just make sure that you don't put your weight or let your hips cross onto the foot that you put down. So as soon as your hips and your weight go onto that foot, your follow is walking forward. So what you'll notice is Mark has to do a little bit of a tap and keep his weight forward when he wants to change directions. So we can take these Charleston-like moves that don't require any stretch, and we can put them together. So we have our 20s Charleston Basic. And if you remember from level 1, we could use kicks with this, or we could use groove walks with this. It doesn't really matter. As long as Mark's not leading a stretch, we can do a lot of those fun footwork variations and keep that solo movement going. So then Mark could add some walking into this. So we're going to take that same move, but this time we're going to add a twist. So it's going to end up being a little bit like the catwalks we did in another lesson. Now we could lead those catwalks using stretch, but it's a lot easier if we do that same thing like we did with the walking, and Mark just goes into some type of walking and keeps the arms loose. So he's going to go ahead and cross behind and get me to cross my legs over. So it's similar to walking, but it has a bit of a twist. So we'll start just with a twisting walk, and Mark gets me to do a little bit of a catwalk, either forward or back. And then the same thing, he's going to do a bit of a tap and keep his weight on the front foot, on his front foot, if he wants to change directions. If he puts his weight back and I plant my weight forward, then he's a little bit stuck to change on that particular foot. He'll have to wait till the next foot. And then same thing on this side. We're doing a bit of a twist, and then he's going to keep his weight on the back leg if we're going this direction, and then he can go back in. So kind of a cool turn we can do from this twisting catwalk move. If Mark's got me doing this catwalk forward, he can use this really loose solo movement and get me to do a free turn And it doesn't require any stretch to get into that turn. It's a real simple, light turn. So once again, so we're going to take a similar idea, and we call this one the push turn. So on this push turn, Mark's going to lead that twisting, sort of walking action, but he can use this twisting to do a front and back. Doesn't really need to lead any stretch for this at all. And then he's going to use his right arm to lead a free turn out of our twisting. And nice and easy, just like that catwalk turn. So with like all of these turns, we can lead a lot of these without stretch, and if the song is slower or a little groovier, you don't really need that stretch or want that stretch. But there's always a time where you're going to want the variation of the move that does have some stretch. The push turn is one of our favorite moves to use. So as we go into this push turn, if we do this first step, so even here, if we decided we didn't want any stretch, as we go into this second one, Mark could go ahead and engage his shoulder muscles here. And what ends up happening is we get some stretch in this front arm. So remember, when we're doing a stretching or a compressing move, we want to keep the hands in the middle. So we're going to pull against each other or push against each other's hands. We can use that to create a much more dynamic spin or turn out of that free turn. So then the push turn could have a whole nother look or dynamic to it if we want some more speed. So if we take that same push turn, but put it in closed position, it looks an awful lot like a tuck turn. And leaders, if you want to lead your tuck turn this way, it's fine and you don't need any sort of stretch. You'll find that you can be a little bit looser with the arms and maybe have more of the look that you're going for versus some of the other ways that we do the tuck turn. So if Mark does that, does a front step but with a little bit of a twist, so we have this walking twisting action, this doesn't require any stretch. So Mark could do a front step, a back step, and then let me do that free turn, and we can turn it into a type of a tuck turn. So once again, front and back with a turn.